morning. We got some new clothing because we got a t-shirt. Look at that. For our Restore Our Roots. Pastor Molly looks better on Pastor Molly than it looks on me. Everyone's got it. Thank you, String. So, yes, we have, we're in week 3, just remind everybody of our stewardship campaign, Restore Our Roots. And this week we do have some t-shirts that are available to everyone. Right after service, just over in our tent, you'll see sizes for kids of all sizes. So I hope you can grab some. And for our friends that are watching us on Zoom, they're available to you as well. If you just go to ccpc.gives and make your stewardship pledge. No, just reach out to me or to the church and we'll get you your shirt. As everyone knows, that this campaign is something that we're examining some of our roots here as a church. And today with the story of Bartimaeus, we are talking about restoring not our roots, but just our sight. And that restoration process is something that I think all of us went through, as Pastor Molly shared, with the events of George Floyd and everything that came after it. And there are a lot of actions that this church taken, from the anti-racism book to even getting the sign up on our fence. I think there was a few years ago where that would have been a lot difficult. That was very difficult. So the character of this church perhaps has changed. And there's a realization that the character will continue to change. And so there's an investment that Deanna, and I've been fortunate to work with Deanna, who's our chair of our Inclusion and Racial Justice Ministry, and is trying to do not just today or a month from now, but something that will last for generations. I want to turn to Deanna. One of the things that I think I mentioned last week that Pastor Molly gave us for this campaign, that for each of these roots, some of them may have been younger than others, some of them may be older than others, some of them may be not as healthy as they should be. Here we're talking about racial justice, and for each of our roots, there's a verse that Pastor Molly was able to give to us that I want to read, the one that really resonated with me. And this is from John 4:20. Whoever claims to love God, yet hates a brother or a sister, is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister, whom they have seen, cannot love God, whom they have not seen. Deanna?
Thanks so much, Peter. It's really great to be here, and I know that you all are smiling and feeling inquisitive behind your masks, just like I was when I was listening to Molly's sermon. What a great setup. I want to start with this story because that's what I do. I grew up in a small town in Western New York where, kind of like this one, everyone pretty much looked the same and came from similar backgrounds. And to be honest, it was a great place to grow up, very down to earth, but I honestly found that kind of boring. So I really gravitated to the people who were different from me. I fostered a love of culture, it was sort of part of my DNA. And I took that throughout my career. Later, going to college, seeking a place that really fostered diversity even in college. And then I spent really 20 years developing social change initiatives that were designed to benefit the very folks that were less fortunate than me and that needed a leg up. And so I worked on things like infant mortality reduction and smoking cessation among Native youth, for example. I worked extensively with tribal communities. And let me tell you, there are it's been fascinating to me learning and talking with more and more people in this church and finding that actually there are a bunch of us who actually have also worked with Native communities. And I can tell you, Bill Hoffman is nodding, I can tell you there's almost those have been my teachers in developing a sense of cultural humility in my life. Really I learned years ago about the stories that are coming to light today, about Native youth, for example, being taken out of their homes, put into schools, and now we know that had a much more tragic end than even I learned way back in the day. So these teachers have been such important guidance, offered such important guidance to me in my life, and I really parlayed that into joining one of the leading inclusion and diversity consulting firms across, and I brought the spirit of campaign development that we did at that time to that work in that we develop campaigns and strategies together with the communities that we're looking to serve, not for them in a top-down way. And as one of the only professional communicators in that space, I soon was developing strategies for anybody from Mars Inc. to Carnegie Hall. These were organizations that wanted to foster inclusion in their spaces, that wanted to make their spaces more welcoming to other people, with a sense of invitation and a surety that everyone was looking at their own selves to see how they might show up a little differently to make it so everybody felt welcome in the space. It was amazing work, and so I bring that to you today. And so when Pastor Eric shared that we were doing an inclusion racial, well, at the time it was called an historic audit for racism or something, I sort of suggested that we expand this work to include our community as well, not just look externally, but look internally as well. Take a look at our community. How are we doing? And talk to those involved, which is super important. You know, we heard about Bartimaeus imploring Jesus to help open his eyes. And that's really what, as Molly said so eloquently, that's what the Inclusion and Racial Justice Initiative is all about, is just opening our eyes to our origin story with a spirit of love and learning, and I can't say that enough. We approach this work with love and celebration. We're not blaming and shaming and creating negativity and so on. We're really exploring while understanding that there's a lot of pain in that story as well. An incredibly important part of that work. So first of all, we've got this crackpot team of researchers. Fred Schaffer is here and taking a leading role. Phil is as well. There are others on the phone I know, maybe in the community as well. We've talked to folks like Noni Lindahl, who's doing incredible work at the weekday nursery school to foster a sense of inclusion with her families. This is an incredible community, and the key part of this work is really hearing from each of you. One of the strengths that I brought to inclusion and diversity work when I was at Cook Ross was as a storyteller. Our personal stories, as really Molly teed up, are a superpower in fostering spaces that include and welcome others. Because each of us has an incredible story. I've learned about people's professional backgrounds here, their personal stories, their heritage. The more we can have opportunities to share, the closer we become, and then the more welcoming we become as a result. So a really important part is a series of focus groups that we're running that you'll see sort of from groups or folks that have been with the community a little bit longer, folks that are newer to CCPC, folks of color, various ways that we can sort of sort ourselves and talk as a community about how we're doing as a community and welcoming others. So it's a very important, this work is not successful unless we talk to the community that we're affecting directly. So we really invite folks to participate. You'll see an email invitation shortly. So I'll close, I'm probably over my time, but I'll close with another little story. When I was young, my mom, very active in Orchard Park Presbyterian Church, organized a Seder together in partnership with another woman in the community who was Jewish. I think there were probably 3 people in our community who were Jewish. This was one of them. And she organized a Seder. And I remember to this day the harosis that we ate, that kind of cranberry relish, if anybody's experienced that. I literally remember how it tasted. I was probably 10. And I also remember the dozens of people that came to experience a faith tradition that otherwise probably would have been completely foreign to them. It was incredible, and that experience really I refer to so much in my personal life. Jesus taught us that there's room at the table for all, but sometimes you have to just show a little intention in setting that table, in inviting people to it, maybe even serving them a little meal. So this is the spirit with which we're going to grow as a community. We use the wonky word continuous improvement in the space a lot, and that's really the spirit with which we bring to this work. Understanding our history and really hearing from each of you and connecting more. I look forward to growing together with you and to your support throughout Stewardship Week or month or 5 weeks or whatever it is. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing more from each of you.
Thank you so much. You know, I'll wrap up really quick here that when Deanna and I had the pleasure of talking to Pastor Molly about this Inclusion and Justice Review work, we asked her one of the questions we've been asking so many of you, why should CCPC do this? And on Zoom, she looked just like, what? You can't be Christian without doing this work. And that's all she said. Dropped the mic, and it was just so powerful. And it's so powerful because, as Deanna just mentioned, thinking about Jesus, that as our original superhero, he broke down all those barriers. And as we look at to our left and right, and we think about our origin story, if you look to your left and right now, there are all these superheroes that I see in our pews that in their professional life, I look at Jim Massey and what he has shared with me and what he does in his own personal life from an inclusion and racial justice perspective is something that we all benefit from. And in order to do that, we need to commit to this church. That's a financial commitment. That's a commitment to invest in making sure that this process that we have started continues onward, even beyond our generation. With that, I hope you can make your pledge, ccpc.gives. Come out on the lawn, get your t-shirt, and we'll see you next week as well. Pastor Molly.